So yeah, we will. I mean, when we're looking for space, obviously the first round of looks is trying to find something that's cookie cutter, ready to go. But it's obviously not that easy, and so we take it step by step and kind of explain the options. We have a medical consultant that we work with quite a bit that is very up to date on a lot of the regulations and codes and everything else. And we also reach out to the guys like you and your team, and when we have questions and stuff like that, which has been a huge help for us in kind of growing our clientele and making sure we know what we're supposed to know, and that way the doctors are well educated on what they're looking at. So
yeah, so having the right team, just for same thing for us, for you guys, having that right team in place, because we don't know all the answers to everything that can come up. So leaning on you guys on the real estate side, architects, engineers to give us those answers is huge. All right, back with another episode. Today we have Mike Mogerman with Forefront Commercial Real Estate. Welcome to the show, Mike.
Thanks, appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. You and I go back probably about 5 or 6 years. I know we met at ICSC when I first started with Wilson, and then we connected on social, and we kept in touch and commented on stuff and sent. I was looking for a referral in South Florida. You're looking for somebody up in Orlando, so we'd have that kind of a back and forth, and then we finally met in person last year at another ICSC event. Yeah. So it's cool to have that kind of a relationship, I think.
Yeah, and it's definitely, I think, the power of social media too is what's great about that. Not only do you and I discuss stuff with business, but you see the family side of it as well, and it's been great. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I want to definitely compliment you on that, because you're always active on every channel I jump on, whether it's Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, TikTok, you name it, you're on there. So you're doing great, and I'm sure it's helpful for you in business as well.
Yeah, it's been good for us. I mean, over the years, we try and track the business that we pull from it, and I would say on average, I mean, since we started the company back in 2019, we're probably looking around 35% of our business that we attain from social media. So we try to stay on top of it. I mean, it's a pretty good chunk of business that we're able to pull from it. And you'd be surprised where leads come from. I mean, I get people that reach out to me that I haven't spoken to since elementary school that, we're connected. And she's like, oh, my mom's looking to open a restaurant. Can you guys help? Or my dad's a doctor and he needs new office space. I see that you do commercial real estate. So it's cool. Not only do we get leads from within the business, but from where you would never expect to get them. So.
Yeah, it's amazing how many people you can reach with, just a simple post. Yep. And obviously it's the continued efforts, but it's amazing.
So before we jump into our episode, we would like to start off with just asking our guests, what's a recent win that you had, whether in the last month or two? It could be family, it could be business, health, anything that just kind of pops out as something that you like, hey, that was awesome.
Yeah, I was thinking about that question, and really, I mean, with the new year just coming up, I mean, I think the biggest win is just, for me is, the family's in good health, business is busier than ever, so it's, starting the year off strong is a win for me. So.
Awesome. Yeah, that's always a good way to start. And you do have a beautiful family, 2 kids, a beautiful dog too. So. You got it good, but let's just go back to the beginning and love to just have you share a little bit about your commercial real estate journey and how you got started with how you started Forefront, and now you're up in the Carolinas too. So let's just jump back to the beginning before we kind of dive in.
Yeah, I mean, it's going back. I mean, look, I grew up kind of in the business. My dad is a general contractor. So, over the summers, we would, go and work on houses that he was flipping. And, that was, learned how to do all the, the construction trades of drywall and everything else, at a young age. Fast forward, went to college, got my degree in business management and real estate, and then went and got my master's degree in real estate development. Started with Staubach, which is now SRS Real Estate Partners. When I graduated my master's degree, I was with them for a few years. Then I joined Woolbright Development. I was at Woolbright for probably 7 or 8 years. There a good chunk, and did a short stint at Trinity Commercial Group. I ran their leasing department for their Fort Lauderdale office. And back in 2019, we decided to start Forefront, and I've been kind of working here ever since, and it's been good. So
awesome. Yeah, having a dad who has experience as a contractor can definitely, I think, make a difference. Right? Do you think
that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get be either be a GC or be a developer. But when I graduated, back in '08, was not that was probably the worst time in the industry that I've experienced. And nobody was building anything, and I started at SRS, or really because their sister company was building Cypress Equities was building homes in the Bahamas, and so I figured, let me get my foot in the door with their sister company SRS or Staubach, and hopefully I could jump ship and jump over to their Cypress Equities and get into the development side of the business. And the island ended up going under. That whole division closed, during '08 when I started, and I just ended up sticking it out and doing brokerage. So I got into brokerage, not by choice, more just by accident and trying to pursue a development career. And but I enjoyed what I did, and like I said, still doing it, almost 17, 18 years later. So
yeah, that's great. And obviously things are going great. If you started in South Florida, now you're up in the Carolinas. So how did that transition take place, or why did you end up moving up to South Carolina?
There's a few things. So when we started Forefront, we knew we wanted to kind of cover the Southeast. That was our goal, was to be able to start a boutique firm that had good coverage over the Southeast. So we were thinking, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, possibly Tennessee. And my wife's from Ohio, so she's always wanted to move north, ever since we've met. And every summer we go up to Georgia, Lake Lanier area, and spend a couple of weeks up there. And so Georgia was the plan. We planned on eventually, once I got the Fort Lauderdale office up and going, we were going to move to Atlanta, or north of Atlanta, and open up an Atlanta office. And my sister-in-law ended up moving to Charlotte, so we visited her, and during COVID, and I saw the growth potential in Charlotte. I mean, there's just it's beyond anything I've ever seen. And I was like, it's not going to be Atlanta. It's got to be Charlotte. This is the area. So I'm in Fort Mill, South Carolina, which is literally 20 minutes southwest of Charlotte. So just over the border in South Carolina. But so that's really always the plan. And we almost did it like right after COVID. Like we started back in 2019. We started the company then obviously COVID hit. Right when COVID ended, we were going to do it, and it didn't work out. But then another opportunity popped up, and so we just, my wife and I just said, let's pull the trigger. And so Laura Briggle, my business partner, runs our South Florida office, and I got this one up and going. We've been here about a year and a half now, and we're doing great. I mean, we love the fact that a lot of our existing clientele that was in South Florida is using us up here in the Carolinas, and then we're just continuing to grow. Joining networking groups and different events up here to kind of grow our brand and grow what we're doing.
So what is it that you guys specialize in?
So we've kind of evolved a little bit. At one time we had, probably close to 3 million square feet of shopping centers that we were overseeing on the leasing side. Within the last probably 18 months, 2 years, we've kind of changed our model up a little bit. We're doing a lot more 10 a rep than we've ever done. So I would say probably 75% of what we're doing right now is 10 a rep business. And then, Laura in South Florida is still doing some landlord leasing. We've got, a good amount of shopping centers down there that she still oversees. But our predominant role, or my predominant role anyways, up here in the Carolinas, is 10 a rep. So we're doing stuff, Orlando, Tampa, and then, I'm doing stuff as far south as Orlando, Tampa, and then all through the Carolinas. And then Laura is handling, most of South Florida, the west coast of Florida, Naples.
I'm like, what all is encompasses tenant rep? What are you guys doing for the tenant lease negotiations? I mean, kind of run through what that looks like on that side for you as a tenant rep.
Yeah, so typically we're working with business owners or doctors or medical professionals on helping them find a new location for their business. So we go through the market. We look, knowing what they're looking for, all the specifics of what they're looking for, size, demos, and then we go in and evaluate the market and find opportunities. And in today's market, it's tight, it's tough. There's not a lot of available space out there. So, I mean, the last couple of deals I've done have been stuff that have been off market that we've just through relationships, knowing is coming available, have been able to secure. Mm-hmm. So it's been, our goal is, look, at the end of the day, like if you're a doctor, you're working, 8 to 5, 7 to 5 in most cases. Most of the doctors we work with, they're all day. They don't have time to, spend looking for new offices and understanding what they need. And, they hire us to go out there and find it. And then, we get on the phone with them. Typically, most of the doctors I work with, we get on the phone, 5:30, 6 o'clock at night and go through what we found and what's available and set up showings in the evening times, because obviously it's tough for them to get out there in the day. And same with business owners. Most business owners are running their businesses during the day. And so we want to be, an extension of their business, of helping them find, the next step, the next opportunity. So.
Yeah, and you had said something in there, understanding what they need. I was curious about that. Do a lot of folks come to you really truly understanding what their need is, or are you finding you have to kind of help direct them based on what their end goal is?
Yeah, it's 50-50. I say a majority of them don't really know. Mm-hmm. So we will, sit with them and try and understand who their customer is. Where the demos are. Luckily, with like a lot of businesses now with sales track stuff, we can see, zip codes where the customers, where your customers coming from. Obviously, if you're, for us to go to a doctor, if you're a doctor or you're have a small business and most of your clientele is coming within a mile, 2-mile radius of your existing location, and you're trying to move, you obviously don't want to move 10 miles away because you're going to lose probably 90% of that clientele. Mm-hmm. So we try and get them to understand who their clientele is, where their clientele is coming from. Are they a destination-oriented business, or are they convenience? All of that really matters when you're trying to find a new location for your business. So.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah, and so when it comes to healthcare and medical spaces, what are maybe some of the unique challenges that you're facing now as far as finding them space? I mean, you mentioned just in Florida, the sheer availability is much lower than what the demand is. Can you speak to that a little bit, maybe on just some of what those challenges are that you're facing right now?
Yeah, I mean so on the retail side of it, the small shop space is really hard to find. Like we do a lot for Kahala Brands, which is Cold Stone, Sweet Frog, La Dippery, Wetzel's Pretzels. They have a couple, bunch of different brands, but their average square footage is 1,200 square feet. And same with Techie Company, another client of ours. Their average square foot is about 1,000 square feet. So finding small shop space like that has been challenging. Because look, rents are higher than they've ever been right now. So even businesses who typically want larger space are leasing smaller space because of the rent, and which obviously ties up a lot of the small shop space. And So it's tough. There's not a lot of new development going on with the cost of construction, especially in Florida. I mean, Orlando's got a pretty nice little boom going on right now, which is nice, but Tampa as well. But really, South Florida, you don't see a lot being developed right now. Even up here in the Carolinas, I mean, there's a little bit being developed, but not a whole lot. In the smaller markets and more in the major markets, you're seeing some good development. But yeah, so it's hard to find small shop space. And then on the medical side, most of these doctors want second gen space, and it's just really tough to find, especially with the changes in what's going on in the medical industry and everything right now. And so trying to find second gen space that is on par with what all the requirements are for their industry has been a challenge as well. So typically are having to go in, even if it's second gen space, still having to go in and do a ton of remodel. And it's most business owners are trying to keep their expenses down on the relocation, but they're finding that it's actually costing quite a bit. So.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So you mentioned most of your docs are looking for second gen. Is it because of the costs that it takes to build out a new space, or is there just maybe the speed to market, or what do you think the reason that they're looking for second gen?
I think it's really a lot of it comes down to timing. I mean, as you guys know better than anybody, to build out a doctor's office from a vanilla box, I mean, you're looking at a year, 18 months, and a lot of these doctors just don't have that kind of time. Most of these unfortunately, a lot of the doctors, when their lease is coming due in 6 months, that's when they want to remove. And, they didn't think about it 2 years ago when they probably should have been thinking about it. And so now they're down to the wire, either having to renew their existing lease or find a new space. So, and that's a lot of what we work with is, short time frames and not having the time to go out and find a raw space to build from scratch. We've got to find something that's second gen that can, that we can remodel, over the next 3 or 4 months rather than building from scratch, over the next 12 to 18 months. So.
Yeah. So it sounds like having that foresight and understanding, okay, if they can kind of extend the timeline, it makes for an easier process. So find Mike early on, right?
Don't wait till your lease is expiring. What are maybe some other common mistakes that you're seeing out there? Again, healthcare providers budgeting for their space when they're looking to lease something. Obviously, not wait until your lease is about to expire in 6 months, because you're just not going to get something and have it ready built out. But is there anything else?
The challenge, goes back to, again, I think the even if it is second gen, like regulatory compliance with what's required. Retrofitting spaces to meet standards can be costly, time consuming. And the pool of the viable options out in the market is slim. We're looking for probably 4 or 5 different locations right now for an ambulatory surgical center in a couple different markets, and they want second gen space that is ready to go, and unfortunately it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
There are a good amount of larger medical spaces hitting the market, within like 8 to 15,000 square feet that are fairly new build outs due to some other reasons of some other offices closing, but those are just too big to work with. The small side of it, where these doctors need 2,000 to 5,000 square feet. That's what the challenge is. So.
Yeah, and that's obviously those combined, the timeliness. You don't have the time to look, and then now you don't have anything to actually move into.
Yeah, recipe for disaster, right?
Yeah. Now, as far as you talked about the availability of the spaces in South Florida. What does that market look like for healthcare right now, South Florida, or maybe even speak to South Carolina and that region a little bit? How do they differ? What are you seeing down there as far as demand and
supply?
Supply. Growth really right now is kind of in outpatient centers is what I'm seeing. We're seeing a lot of requirements for outpatient centers. I would say technology also. A lot of these doctors, they need they're trying to have the best technology in their in their offices. The X-rays have changed over the years. You used to have lead walls and everything else. Now you don't need any of that, which makes it a little simpler for building out. But the Carolinas, Carolinas, Florida. I mean, in all the markets that we're working in, it's all kind of the same. I mean, you're seeing a change where a lot of these doctors are coming out of medical office buildings that are 4, 5, 6. Have to go and get. This really changed actually back in COVID, like when doctors and patients didn't want to get in elevators with people to go up to the office. We saw a huge push for doctor offices to be either freestanding or placed in like retail settings, retail shopping centers. That's what kept us alive in 2020 when we started Forefront. I would say half the deals we did during COVID were medical related, working with doctors' offices coming out of your standard typical doctor's office that's a 5, 6 story building and going into a retail setting. And the doctors love it. I mean, originally it used to be, there was a word that one of the doctors used for it, but it was like medical suicide or something like that is what they called it when you went into a retail center. And now it's a complete 180. Now they want to go into the retail centers because there's a convenience, and in and out. It's easy. It gives their staff options for lunch and stuff like that within the center. They don't have to go far for lunch. There's just the convenience aspect of it. And a lot of times they can be located within a shopping center that's close to their house. They're not having to drive 15, 20, 30 minutes, an hour to go to work anymore. They can find a center that's close proximity to home and and have their operations close by. So.
Yeah, and you got the parking availability, so there's no issues with that typically. We do
Nope.
quite a bit of our projects that are focused in shopping centers and turning those into medical clinics. I would say probably over 80% of our new projects that we're seeing are in existing shopping centers because they have the space. And again, the requirements. Now, the challenges that we see on our end is like you don't have the power requirement, or you don't have the water, or there's maybe structural issues that come with the building. How do you advise or when you're looking at spaces to look for? Do you look for some of these in your initial search, or is it just let's find a space if we can make the numbers work and then move forward and figure it out? Or how does that process typically work for you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little bit of a blend. I mean, obviously, yes, power, you're right, is a big thing. I mean, we've looked at options for clients, and running the additional power, I mean, could run you $50, $60, $70,000. It's not cheap. And even with some of our restaurant concepts that need more power, power becomes is definitely a major issue. In addition to power, HVAC, a lot of these retail settings don't have the HVAC that a medical office or a restaurant or something like that is going to need. So that we'll look into that. Water is an issue too. With the new regulations, most doctors need water in every exam room. So if you have a second gen space that's kind of an older setting that doesn't have water to go in and cut the floors and run the piping, and that can become expensive, and you're almost better off starting from scratch in that case, because you've pretty much now are tearing walls down, cutting concrete floors. It becomes expensive. So yeah, we will. I mean, when we're looking for space, obviously the first round of looks is trying to find something that's cookie cutter, ready to go. But it's obviously not that easy, and so we take it step by step and kind of explain the options. We have a medical consultant that we work with quite a bit, that is very up to date on a lot of the regulations and codes and everything else. And we also reach out to guys like you and your team, and when we have questions and stuff like that, which has been a huge help for us and kind of growing our clientele and making sure we know what we're supposed to know, and that way the doctors are well educated on what they're looking at. So
Yeah, so having the right team, just for same thing for us, for you guys, having that right team in place, because we don't know all the answers to everything that can come up. So leaning on you guys on the real estate side, architects, engineers to give us those answers is huge.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, and then location, like I said, that's kind of a lot of stuff we've talked about, but location, size and layout of the spaces, compliance regulations, zoning is a big issue with medical. I mean, there's some shopping centers where the medical is it's not zoned and they can't go into that center. We just had a doctor who wanted to go into an office building that he found that he loved, and unfortunately it wasn't zoned. It was zoned for office, but it was not zoned for medical. And after speaking with the city and everything else, it was never going to happen. So zoning is definitely a big, issue that we've got to work around. And then again, like you said, power, HVAC, plumbing, high-speed internet has been an issue in some spaces we looked at. There's some spaces that not able to get the internet speeds that the doctors are going to need for all the new technology and record keeping that they're required to have. So it's there's a lot to know, and the worst thing that could ever happen is a doctor signing a lease, 10-year lease on a space, and finding out you can't even, as something as which you would think in today's world, but not being able to get the internet speed that he needs is a challenge. So.
Yeah, important to get with the right people like yourself. And I know you work with Dave on some of the code stuff and the construction stuff. But yeah, there's a good book out there, Who Not How, right? And it really highlights, the benefits of letting folks that excel in certain areas and know what they're doing take those things on. Because to your point, it saves a whole lot of time and headache, right?
Yeah.
To sign a 10-year lease just to understand it doesn't fit your need, sure, that's not fun, not cheap.
Even when they're negotiating a lease, I mean, we're not attorneys, so we tell all of our clients, to hire an attorney to review their leases, because, if it comes down to it, the business isn't successful. You need to know that you have some sort of out, and and it's there's a lot of stuff that can be negotiated in the lease to kind of assist with that. Or even just the operations, who's responsible for what during the lease term. I mean, so We've had some clients who just want to sign and just to get it done and over with, but we push get an attorney, have the right person look it over, make sure just look. Every lease is going to be one-sided. It's going to be and the landlord's benefit. Mm-hmm. So I always recommend that a tenant hires an attorney and works through it and understands what they're signing. So.
Yeah. I mean, I guess even a small nuance, right, could have big implications over a 10-year period.
Yeah, absolutely. How does leasing medical office space compare to retail? Like and we talked about some of the requirements that are necessary, right, for the space and for the business to be able to operate. But how does it actually getting to that leasing process differ from somebody looking to a restaurant going in versus a healthcare medical building?
So the biggest differences with that, I would say, one is the higher build out costs. A lot of times it's a longer lease term. A lot of doctors will try and do a 10 or 15-year lease. Rental rates are typically going to be a little higher, just because of the depending on who does what. But like if it's in a medical office building, the rental rate's going to be a little higher. If it's in a retail setting and you're looking for the landlord to contribute a lot of improvement allowance, your rental rates are going to get bumped because of that. But most landlords look at medical as a solid investment. They're stable, they're long-term tenants. There's a growing demand for outpatient healthcare services right now, and these doctors or these landlords see that putting in a doctor that's going to be there for the next 10 to 20 years is a favor to them, because they know they're not going to have to release that space anytime soon, or they hope they're not going to have to. Otherwise, they're taking a risk on a retail tenant, either a mom and pop or something else that could possibly go belly up in 2 years, and they're back to square one having to release that space. So when we're looking, in retail setting for medical doctors, medical offices, the landlords are very, open to working with us. And same with medical office buildings too. They know that once they get this lease done, that doctor's going to be there for 10, 15 years, and they don't really have to worry about it again. So.
Where do you see, what is something that you see when folks come to you, specific to medical or, just in general, when they come to you that, you kind of say, okay, if they had already done this, if they had already figured this out, if they had this would be a much smoother process. And maybe it's just the foresight to give you the proper amount of time to identify a site, but.
I got it. Yeah. So really knowing what they want, I think is a big thing, because when a lot of times I work with doctors, and you have the doctor, and then you have either the entity who owns their operations, or you'll have the office manager, and everybody's on a different page of what everybody wants. So you've always got to kind of sit down and really, almost, it's like an interview process of understanding what everybody wants, and try and kind of get everybody on the same page.
Mm-hmm.
And then the big thing is a lot of, not even doctors, but doctors, business owners, everybody, they always underestimate the build out costs. So kind of coming and having a better understanding of that is definitely key.
Mm-hmm.
Because look, the worst thing you want to do is go out and spend, 4 or 5 months looking for space for somebody. And then when they realize it's going to cost them, $500,000 to $1 million to build out the space, they decide not to do it. So we try and make sure that everybody understands what they're walking into from day one, and make sure that they know what they're doing. They understand the process, understand the costs, and the timeline, and everything else that goes with it. So
yeah, that's a good point. Making sure, because I'm sure you run into that all too often, right? 4 or 5, 6 months worth of work, only to find out, hey, this isn't going to work, and probably could have been something determined early on.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's a tough conversation to have for me as a broker, and for many brokers, is having a conversation with a client to understand what their financials look like. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's a personal question. I mean, you don't want to, when you sit down and ask the doctor, like, what's your credit like? What kind of, what does your savings look like? What kind of money are you looking to put into this project? That's personal questions, but they're questions that have to be asked, and understanding that early on definitely helps the process. Because the last thing you want to do is go out there and find a space that's 3 times over their budget and scare them away. You need to understand what their budget is. You need to understand what they're willing to put into the deal, what they have to invest in the build out, and then understanding all of those costs is big. So
something that you said, that most doctors aren't even aware that firms like yours exist and they can come to you for help with this. That's shocking to me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, we doctors, business owners, like, I can't tell you how many times I speak with somebody that will call on a space that we have, and as I'm talking to them, I realize they're not being represented, and I explain to them that we can assist them, and or a doctor that gets referred to me through a friend, or through our consultant that we work with. A lot of times they just had no idea that there's brokers out there that can assist them in finding that. They thought that they were on their own, having to go on LoopNet and drive around looking for space, and then
good use of their time.
They're really surprised when they realize it doesn't cost them anything either.
Right.
We get paid by the landlord, like if you were selling your house.
I just want to reiterate that, because that's an important point here. I think don't want to skip over, is that you guys don't pay you out of pocket. It is the landlord that's where your fees come out, and that's who pays you. So I just wanted to make sure we highlight that here, because if somebody's watching this, and a doctor potentially, and they're looking for new space, reach out to guys like Mike who know the market and understand that. And knowing that talking to somebody like that is going to be so valuable and doesn't cost you anything, because it will, because that's not how it's structured. So just before you went on, I wanted to cut you off and make sure we got that in.
No, but that's the truth of it. They're like, what do you mean we don't have to pay you? I'm like, so it's. I mean, look, like you said, we get paid by the landlord. And most landlords, a lot of times some doctors, or I keep saying doctors, we're talking about doctors, but just anybody that's looking to own a business, sometimes I feel like they're going to get a better deal because if the landlord doesn't have to pay a commission. And a lot of times it's not the case. Most of the time it's not the case because the landlord does not want to, look, they're busy. They have, however many shopping centers or how many office buildings they have. They don't want to have to sit down and educate you on everything that goes on with the process of the lease and the build out. And they want you to be working with a broker whose job is to educate you on the lease and the build out and the process. And they'd rather pay us for our time than spend their time doing that. And I've had some guys call me up and say, hey, look, I like this space, but the landlord won't even talk to me unless I'm being represented. And, it's, so we've stepped in to help them out. And, but it's really a win-win for you because we know what most landlords will bend on. We know, what they won't bend on. So we know how to structure the best deal, for you as a business owner or the medical professional, and you're going to get a better deal at the end of the day by knowing that. So,
yeah. And the other thing too is, again, we kind of skipped over this, was that you guys have the ability to find off-market deals, whereas if they're looking on LoopNet, everybody has access to that, but it's really the value there is you're able to find because of your connections and the 17 years of 40 years in South Florida and having those relationships. That's how you're able to find these guys really the best space at the best rates that they wouldn't even be able to have access to or would be able to see.
Correct. Yeah. Even in today's market, I mean, a lot of times by the time it's on LoopNet, it's already being negotiated or is close to being under contract. A lot of the, like I think I mentioned early on, I think probably the last 4 or 5 deals that we've worked on have all been off-market opportunities, stuff that we found that, a tenant was, 6 months behind on rent and the landlord was looking to replace them, but they weren't marketing the space, or a lease was coming due that we knew of. And, we reached out, early on and were able to get a contract, in place with it. So, and a lot of times, with our relationships, landlords will call us like, hey, I've got this guy's getting ready, hasn't paid rent in 3 months. Who do you have or who you're working with in the market? Anybody would be a fit for the space. And, so it's, it goes both ways. I mean, landlords call us, we call them, and, we don't just look on LoopNet or CoStar. We call, like if you're looking to go in a specific market, we call on every landlord to because you never know if there is, an off-market opportunity that exists, which is not being marketed. And a lot of times those are the best deals that you're going to find. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, what's been, we're kind of wrapping up here. What's been one of the most rewarding projects that you worked on?
So I was thinking about that, and the most rewarding project was probably a recent deal we did in Pembroke Pines. It was about a 7,500 square foot medical office for a client, and the reason that was the most rewarding is because it was repeat business. And when a client re-engages us to assist them with their continued expansion, I mean I couldn't ask for anything more than that. Mm-hmm. That means you did a good job on the last one, and now they're asking for your help again. So repeat business is the most rewarding for in our business, and so that last deal that we just did was what I would say was most rewarding because of it being a repeat business. And we did, and as soon as we finalized that deal, they gave us another requirement for a project we're working on in the Carolinas. So went from Pembroke Pines, now we're looking in North Carolina for the same client, and so it's been great. So.
Awesome. Yeah. Definitely.
Well, Mike, this has been great, man. It's awesome to get to know you on a little bit deeper level and having these conversations about your business. Appreciate you jumping on and having this conversation with us as well. Where can we find you? You're all over socials, but what's the best way to people to reach out to you?
Really, I mean, look, our website, Forefront, F-O-R-E, frontcre.com. We've got all the channels, our YouTube, social media, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, we're there. That's really the best way to get hold of us. So.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on.
Appreciate it, Mike.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me, and wish you guys success with this. So.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thanks.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks. Take care.
Bye.